What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the vlog. I have a pretty exciting session here. Ran probably the hottest I've ever run in a 2-3 session. I would consider it a sun run, definitely. I got a lot of premium hands. I kept binking the turn on both boards when I'd run it twice with people. Just really sick runouts that proved pretty favorable for me. Also hit my first royal flush. I hit a royal, first time ever.
You want to get a better shot?
Yeah, maybe. That's my first royal ever, yeah. Which was very exciting. It was on a double board bomb pot PLO, but, you know, still cool nonetheless. I do wish it was in regular Hold'em, but my first royal this early on into like my poker career, I guess, it's pretty cool. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun playing, and I'll see you guys soon. My first hand of the night, I pick up Queen Jack offsuit in the big blind. I bought in for $500, which is the cap in this 2-3 game at Lucky Lady. Under the gun raises to 15, and under the gun +1 puts in the call. I decide in the small blind here for $10 more. I want to see a flop 3 ways, so I put in the call, and we have about $45 in the middle. I've been playing a lot on live streams recently, which tend to play a lot wider and a lot more action, so trying to stay disciplined here on the outside table and make sure that I play a bit tighter and just more disciplined overall. The flop comes out 9-8-7, so we have a gut shot here, and I check it over to the pre-flop aggressor. And he actually checks pretty quickly here, so under the gun +1 fires off a bet of $20 into the pot. I decide I want to see one more card for that price, considering we have 2 overs and a gut shot to the nut straight. I want to continue, so I put in the call, so does the pre-flop aggressor. We're now 3 ways headed to a turn. And the turn is a queen of spades, a great card for us. We make top pair with a pretty good kicker. I check, and under the gun checks as well. Under the gun +1 fires off a bet of $45. Obviously, it'd be pretty bad if we're against something like Jack 10, a very specific hand right now to be against, but I think it's definitely in my opponent's ranges. I don't think under the gun would check if he had Jack 10 here with a flush draw out. Under the gun +1 might have that, so I gotta be a bit cautious, but I do put in the call here for $45, considering we have some decent equity in this hand with top pair and a good kicker, and also a gut shot here for the straight. Under the gun puts in the call as well, so we're 3 players now headed to the river. Hoping to fade the ace or a diamond on this river. Definitely think my opponents could be on a flush draw or hold an ace, but luckily for us, the 10 of hearts comes out. And I don't think enough in this spot. I just check immediately, hoping that someone will bet into my straight. Obviously a huge mistake. I lost a lot of value from hands like ace queen or maybe even a 2 pair. Missed flush draws I was hoping would maybe try to go for a bluff, I guess, but I don't think I spent enough time thinking there, and we take down a nice sized pot. Probably could have got a bit more value out of 1 or 2 of my opponents there, and we're on to the next hand. Couple hands later, I pick up aces on the button. I'm the effective stack at the table right now, and under the gun ends up raising it up to 15. With aces here in position, I definitely want to isolate a bit and also build this pot early, so I raise it up to $45, and all opponents fold except under the gun, who's going to put in the call here, so now we're heads up going to a flop. I actually consider this guy one of my better friends at this casino and also in poker in general. Played with him many times at this point, and we both kind of know how each other plays. He's a generally tight player, and considering that he just called my 3-bet pre-flop, I think he might have a hand like 10s to queens, or maybe even ace queen or ace jack. The flop's amazing for us. It comes out 2-3-2 with 2 spades. He checks over to me, and I decide to go for a c-bet here of $75, really targeting some of those over pairs in this spot, and using my position here to build the pot. He puts in the call, which makes me suspect that it's likely we're against something between 10s to queens, and we have him likely dominated. I doubt kings will play slow like this here, but perhaps maybe jacks or queens are playing a bit passive. 7 of clubs comes out on the turn, and he checks it over to me. We have 2 flush draws out here. If I really think he has an overpair, obviously we're not worried about that, but he could also have something like ace queen or even ace king, and he wants to go for a flush if he's holding maybe some of those. So I start setting up for a jam on the river, and I bet $150. He puts in a pretty quick call, so not too worried about this spot, hoping that we fade a flush, and luckily for us, the king of diamonds comes out. Like I said, I think it's unlikely he has kings, considering that he didn't 4-bet me pre-flop, and also he wasn't too aggressive post flop. So I go ahead and put in the jam once he checks over to me. He puts in the call and he shows jacks for a pretty sick cooler. I guess the king would have been his only saving grace there on the river, but considering he was already so far in and he got pretty good pot odds, I don't know how he'd full jacks in that spot. It's just a pretty nasty cooler overall, and I take down a nice size pot from my friend for essentially a double up. About 30 minutes goes by and we pick up queen 5 suited. I'm the effective stack at the table. I have about 750 behind, and I know I said I'm going to start playing tighter and be more disciplined in my decisions here, especially since this isn't a streamed game. Middle position, my friend over there raises it up to $20, and really I should be folding, especially if another raise comes through or the opponent to my right folds, but he actually ends up putting in the call for $20, so it's about like $15 more for me, or whatever, 17 or something for me to continue. I decide that I want to see a flop with queen 5 suited and maybe assess from there. Obviously I can get in a lot of trouble with this hand and it's a bit wide, but I decide to go for it anyway. The flop comes out with 2 5s and an ace of clubs, so we make trips and we have a backdoor flush in case anything gets a little bit weird later. Very strong hand. Obviously, I think we have the best hand at this point. I check over to the pre-flop aggressor. He fires off a bet for $20. Cutoff decides that for 20 they want to see a turn, so he comes along for the ride. I don't believe I need to raise here. I don't think I need that much protection on this board. I don't want to scare anybody off, so I just put in the call for $20 and decide I want to assess on the turn what to do next. The turn is a 3 of diamond, and I decide to check it over to the pre-flop aggressor again with the intention of perhaps check raising here, thinking I can get some more value on the turn versus the river. So when he bets out $45 and the cutoff folds, I think it's time to start putting in the money. There's about 165 in the middle right now. I'm trying to decide what to bet out here that may get a call but also get as much value as possible. So I decide on 115. Like I said, my friend knows how I play, and typically I bet quite polar when I'm bluffing or also when I have a really strong hand. So I do think that a 70% bet here is not unreasonable, considering the circumstances of who I'm playing against and him knowing how I play. He puts a little bit of thought into the decision here. It looks like he doesn't want to let it go, but ultimately he does fold. Was really hoping he had an ace in his hand and he would continue. Think I might have bet a little bit too large, but I'm still overall happy with the outcome of the hand, and I do think the time for value is on the turn. Maybe could have waited for the river, but overall happy with getting a decent sized pot with a relatively weak hand pre-flop. A few minutes go by and we pick up king 9 suited on the button. Under the gun opens to $15. The middle position player puts in the call, hijack puts in the call shortly after that, and I think I'm in a good spot here to raise it with king 9 suited on the button. Obviously want to play this hand here in the spot with this many limpers, so I go ahead and bump it up to $60. Preferably we take down this pot pre-flop. The initial raiser actually folds, and that middle position player calls the $60 raise. And the hijack decides that they want to come along for a flop as well, so they call too. We're 3 players headed to a flop now with about 230 in the middle. I am still the effective stack at this point, so I pretty much cover both these players, and the flop comes out with 2 5s and a king. There's 2 clubs out there. Both players check pretty quick over to me. I decide to be a little sneaky here and check my king back. Obviously don't think either one of these players have a 5, and there is a flush draw out there. I should probably bet here a bit to get some value, but I end up just checking and playing it safe, and the 10 of hearts comes out on the turn. This is an interesting card here because I do think some hands like ace 10 suited improve obviously quite a bit, and they might not put me on a king considering I check the flop, but both players check over to me and I bump it up here. I make a bet for $75, trying to get some value out with my king and targeting some of those 10x hands. I thought this was a pretty reasonable size bet to get called, but both players end up folding. Might have bet a little bit too high there, but considering there's 2 flush draws out there and I wanted to get some value with my king, that's kind of what I decided to go with. So take down a medium-sized pot and we're on to a bomb pot with a dealer change. I know a lot of people have told me they don't like watching bomb pots, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about this one, but basically I turn pretty strong hands on both boards. I turn a boat on the top board and a straight on the bottom, and I end up scooping a massive bomb pot. I still have a lot to learn about PLO, especially with the bomb pots, so not exactly sure if I even played this hand that great, but it ended up all going in on the river, and yeah, we got really lucky. So that was that hand, and I'll keep that one short. If you want to check it out, obviously feel free to pause and look at the action there on what the board shows, but we're on to the next hand. Okay. About 10 minutes go by and we pick up King 10 suited on the button. I'm still the effective stack at this point. We're well over $1,500 in profit in just over an hour. Super good session so far. Feel like I'm sun running. It opens up to $15 and the middle position player puts in the call, and so does the cutoff. So 3 players here with $15 in the pot. I decide to bump it up to 80 on the button here with King 10 suited. I'd like to reduce the number of players in this pot by a little bit if we can, but also since I have a strong position with suited king, I want to take advantage of that and get some more money in the pot pre-flop. I let my buddy to the right over here sweat my hand with me. Under the gun +1, the initial opener does put in the call for 80. So now it's onto that middle position player to decide what he wants to do. And he's touching his chips a bit. I think he's going to go for a raise here, actually, just based off of what he was doing. But if I was better at reading people, I'd probably be playing higher stakes. So clearly I misread that. He ends up just putting in the call. $80, and the cutoff decides with his blue chips it's not worth coloring these up and getting the chips in, so he wants to just go do that and fold his hand. So we're 3 players headed to a flop here. I have King 10 suited, hoping to see some diamonds or maybe some draws or even a king, but unfortunately the flop is not a great one for us. It comes out Queen 9-3. We have another gut shot and we have no diamonds on the board. They check over to me, and I want to be a bit cautious here 3 ways, considering there's no diamonds out there and I don't have much equity. So I go ahead and just check, and we bink the jack of clubs on the turn. Insane card. We basically make the nuts here, and they both check over to me. So I'm just trying to see how much money I can get in now to start getting some value. Obviously, with the 2 clubs, there are backdoor clubs there that could get in here, so I want to make sure I'm charging any clubs, but I do also want to get some value out of maybe some queens or jacks. I'm not exactly sure if a pair of queens or jacks would be checking the turn here, considering there are 2 clubs and a possible straight out there, so I bet $200, thinking that's a pretty good sizing here for getting maybe a queen to continue, or like I said, a club. He does end up putting in the fold, the initial pre-flop aggressor, but the middle position player is thinking and looks like he wants to put in the call. Obviously, I'm hoping he puts in the call here, holding the nuts with King 10. I don't think really much will be able to beat me on this hand unless the board pairs and he somehow has a set right now that is slow playing or something along those lines. Maybe he has a hand like ace king and a 10 comes out, but then again I'm holding a 10 and a king, so that's pretty unlikely. I think we have this board locked down, wanting to fade a club on the river and a board pair obviously. And this player has been pretty sticky throughout the night, so I fully expect him to just continue on here, which he does. Puts in the call. So we're now heads up, headed to a river. Like I said, really hoping we don't see a club, just in case anything weird happens. But 7 of clubs does come out. Unfortunately, that does bring in the flush if there is one. He jams for the remainder of his stack, which is like $70. So obviously I'm calling anything at this point. Just do a quick little check again to make sure we have this straight, and I show the bad news to him that I did make the straight. I was calling probably anything anyways at that point, because if I lose to backdoor clubs, I lose to backdoor clubs, but luckily he did just have $70 behind, so the decision was quite easy and didn't have to risk much. In the very next hand, we pick up pocket sixes. I start recording a bit late, so unfortunately I don't have track of the pre-flop action here, but I think it's 3 or 4 of us to the flop, which comes out jack ace 3, so not the best flop for us holding sixes here. Under the gun 1 and middle position both check to me. I go ahead and check here too. Don't really see a reason to continue on to this board, but a 6 of clubs comes out on the turn, and UTG1 ends up betting $5, and he gets raised by the middle position there for $45. I have a very strong hand here. I might need a little bit of protection considering a hand like ace 6 could boat up on the river, but I'm blocking the 6s. Perhaps like a 2-pair ace jack might get there on the river, but I don't see really what beats us except maybe a backdoor club. So I just put in the call here. Want to get as much value from my opponents as possible. Both players put in the call, so we're now 3 players headed to a river. And the river comes out at ace of hearts, so we make a boat. Like I said, we're smashing every turn this session, it feels like. It's kind of insane, and then boating up on the river is really good too, especially if my opponents have an ace. We could get a lot of value from them this hand. UTG1 checks it over to the middle position, who instantly jams for the remainder of his stack, which is about $250 or so. My notes on this hand weren't the best, so it's a bit all over the place, but it's close to $250. That's the main idea of the bet anyway. So I end up putting in a call here. I'm actually racking up my chips because I'm trying to, sell the yellows for some white chips because the stack is just growing ridiculously large. So I'm a bit distracted. I should have been more focused this hand, but I end up putting in the call, hoping that the under the gun 1 player does call as well. Under the gun 1 player is saying that he has an ace, so at this point I know that I'm good because he would have snap jammed or snap called if he had a boat here. So that tells me that we probably have both players beat. I don't know what that middle position player would be jamming with here into me. If he has something like maybe 3s, he could be doing that, or ace X as well, but I'm pretty confident we have the best hand at this point, so I'm not too worried, just trying to see if we can get some more money here from UTG1, and if not, it's all good because this is a very large pot. UTG1 does end up folding here. He said he had an ace, and I believe him because he's my friend. So the good news is I didn't take more money from my friend, but the bad news is we didn't get as much value as maybe we could have on that pot. But I think my line of calling this guy's jam is pretty strong and was a red flag to my friend that I definitely haven't beat, especially if he has a weak kicker. So that hand was pretty nice, and our stack is growing quite fast. On to the next hand. I stayed patient and disciplined and didn't play any trash hands up to this point really, in between that last one and this one in the last 45 minutes. So we got rewarded and pick up pocket queens finally in the small blind here. I end up opening up to $15 when it limps over to me, and the big blind raises to 40. This is a pretty tight player. I've seen him play a few times here, and very rarely he raises or 3-bets, and very rarely he opens, so I'm a bit worried about what he may have, but I have a very strong hand in the small blind here, so I want to get this pot a little bit bigger before we get to the flop, so I raise it up to 160. He quickly jams for the remainder of his stack, which is about 450 more, roughly. I really want to call with queens, but I know he's a really tight player. I feel like he's only doing this with kings or aces, so I fold, and sure enough, he does show pocket aces. Pretty happy with how I folded there. I think it's disciplined for me. I know it's an easy fold for most people, but maybe a week or two ago, I would be calling that and losing $400 or $500. So happy with how I played that hand. Maybe I shouldn't have raised, but it is what it is, and we're on to the next hand. Some time goes by, and I pick up Queen 9 suited. I'm in the middle position, and I have about $1,800 or so behind. It opens up to $12. I got one caller there, and I end up coming along as well for the ride. There might be an argument to be made to either raise or fold this hand, but I kind of want to see a flop, and hopefully that doesn't get me into any trouble. But I do end up just putting in the call, and so does one other player. So it's going to be 4 players here going to a flop, and I have Queen 9 suited in a pretty good spot. I'm technically the late position here. No one else is acting after me. The flop comes out ace king 3 with 2 clubs. Really good flop for us. We have a backdoor straight draw, and obviously we have that front door flush draw that we can hit, which is what we really want to see. So when all players check over to me, I go ahead and bet $25 to start building this pot. Small blind must have missed his flop, so he's out of here, and the big blind as well puts in the fold. Middle position decides that he wants to call, and we're going heads up to a turn. So my opponent actually has been doing this a lot all night, but he just blind checks over to me here. Not really sure what that indicates. I think he just does that a lot, and it's just whatever. So when he checks over to me and I see the 4 of clubs comes out, I'm quite happy with making my flush. Basically the second nut flush here, besides king high flush and a straight flush obviously, but I go ahead and bet out $50. I'm hoping it's a clean run out and no club comes out, because there is definitely a real possibility he could have the king of clubs in his hand. So he calls $50 here, and we're going to be going to a river. The pot's getting quite large now, and he also checks in the dark again. I don't practice enough against people that check in the dark, so I'm not entirely sure what that means, but he seems to do it a lot, so I don't think of it too much. But the 7 of clubs comes out on the river. I really think this is just a check back, because I'm not sure if a weaker flush than a queen is going to be calling here, and I also don't know if like ace X or something would be calling here either. Not exactly sure what I'm targeting with this $100 bet, but I'm hoping to get some value from maybe, I guess, ace X, like I said, or a weaker flush. But unfortunately, he ends up raising me to 400, so the check raise there is quite strong and a pretty big red flag. I don't know how many times this would be a bluff for this guy. You know, I think on a 4 clubbed board, he's just got to be holding the king here, but for some reason, I just think I'm good. So I tank for quite a bit, trying to think this through, what he might have. Looking back on it, I do think this is probably just a pretty easy fold. I essentially have the second nut flush here. I doubt he would make a straight flush with how it was played pre-flop and post-flop. So I just tell myself, can I really fold a second nut flush here in this spot to a check raise on the river? I know in live poker it's a pretty strong line to check raise on the river like that, but he did check in the dark as well, so I'm thinking, did he really get there with the king of clubs? I do end up putting in the call for 300 more, so 400 total, and I get shown the bad news. He had king 8 of clubs, so he was absolutely dominating us throughout the whole entire hand, on the flop, on the turn, and on the river. I think the club on the river should have been able to save me some money, but I made an amateur play here and ended up trying to get greedy, betting $100 on the river. Put me in a tough spot after that to call a check raise, and I made a misplay calling that and lose $400 where I definitely shouldn't have lost. So hand went pretty rough, but I have a lot to learn from it, and we're on to the next one. About 5 minutes later, we pick up pocket jacks. I'm in a late position, and I raise it up to $15 after it limps over to me. And most players do call here. We get 3 callers, which isn't the best case for us, considering any king, queen, or ace on the flop is going to be a bit scary now. But, you know, maybe we could drill a set or some kind of draw, so hopeful to go to the flop here with 3 players and fade any high cards. And the flop is quite an interesting one, a very action flop. It comes out queen 9-8, all hearts. So not only do we have a gut shot, but we also have a flush draw, and we have a decent pair on this board. I mean, obviously a queen beats us, but you know, with what we have here, I want to start betting and building this pot. So I sent out a bet of $40. The big blind has about $200 behind. He ends up check raising here to 150, so he has about $50 more behind. If everyone else folds here, I don't think there's much else for me to do besides just go all in with my draw and also my jacks here. It's only $50 more anyway, so it's either a fold or a jam. I think jamming here is the correct play, considering there was only $50 behind. We end up running it twice for a relatively small pot, and just hoping that we make a flush. He shows queen 10, so we are behind a bit. With the 10 of hearts he's showing, it is good news, because if the hearts come, at least we win there. And luckily on that first board, a 2 of hearts comes out very fast, so we avoid that sweat there. An ace of hearts on the second board. We end up scooping this pot with a very lucky run out on both boards. Thankful for that. About 10 minutes goes by and it's a dealer change, so it's time for another bomb pot. On the first board, we flop the nut flush, and on the second board, we have a 6, so nothing much going on there. I end up betting pot, pretty early position here, which gets a lot of people to fold, but I think I get 1 or 2 callers. And we end up turning a royal flush with the 10 of spades on the top board. My first royal flush ever. It is a bit lame that it's a double board bomb pot, but still my first royal flush ever, and it felt really cool to get. This ended up being a chopped pot, so I got almost nothing on the bottom board. I think the guy won with 2 pair. It ended up all going in at the end, but very fortunate to experience my first royal flush. Hope I get one in Texas Hold'em sometime as well, but still pretty cool to experience it. In one of the last hands of the night, we pick up Jack 8 suited on the button. I have a lot of profit up to this point. I think we're up about $1,500. I've been sun running most of the night and just, you know, getting there a lot of the times on the turn, maybe not making the best decisions, but getting rewarded for it. So it's been a good session overall. It raises up to $17. We have one caller before me, and then I end up putting the call in as well. We drill the flop here with top 2 pair, no flush draws out there. We're in a really good spot. I don't think anything else beats us here. The only thing I'm really worried about is a set, obviously, but that's probably unlikely. I do think there is a chance of an overpair with the pre-flop aggressor because he's generally pretty tight. He ends up betting $40 into both of us. Hijack folds, and I don't really think my hand needs much protection, so I just put in the call. Hoping to fade some high cards here. Obviously Jack X, like Jack Queen, Jack King, Jack Ace, things like that could get there. When I see a King of Diamonds on the turn, it's definitely not the best card for us because a better 2 pair does get there. He does bet out $100. I think for quite a bit of time here what I want to do with this hand. I do have 2 pair, but I really only lose to King Jack at this spot or a set. If I lose to a set, so be it. I don't want the diamond to get there and I don't want the straights to get there, so I want to make sure I charge him now to continue playing. This might be a bit aggressive, but I do decide to jam for the remainder of his stack, which is close to I think $400. He does end up snap calling me, so I know we're not in good shape. It's likely we're against a better 2 pair or a set. I get the bad news. He wants to run it once and he shows King Jack. We're gonna need a miracle on this river to save us. This was the one hand I was very scared about going into here, and I think maybe jamming the turn was a mistake, but I have to live with it now. Obviously some sets could have got there too, so it might have been an overplay on my hand. 3 of spades comes out on the river. We lose a pretty large size pot to end the night, and we end with about $1,500 in profit though, so could have gone a bit better, but went very good overall, and I'm happy with how we did. All right, everyone, that wraps up my 2-3 session. I had a very fun time. I ran really well, and I think I played solid overall, made about $1,500. Just want to give kind of a quick update on where we're at on the win-loss as of right now. I'll put it up right over here, but basically I was in a bit of a hole towards the end of 2024 and coming up to finishing my first year of poker. I still have less than 400 hours in poker, so I have a lot to learn, obviously, but happy to say that we've kind of consistently been like teetering between being a winning player and a losing player, I guess, with going up a couple hundred and then down a couple hundred lifetime so far. So right now we're up about, I think, $1,000 since I started playing last April. So, you know, not where I want to be, but definitely happy that we're out of that very large hole we were in towards the start of the year. So thanks again for watching, everybody, and I hope to see you guys soon.